We begin today the Gemara on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis, 4 lines down, 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara here before brought a machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish regarding the source of the fact that kesef is not a kinyan for metaltalin. Rabbi Yochanan says, Minatayra kesef works by metaltalin. You find by hektish that you redeem hektish with kesef, so it works by any kinyan of metaltalin. Chachamim were geyser because of the reason of Shema Yisrafu Yoyman Nisrafu Chitecha Ba'aliyah that the kinyan of kesef does not work by metaltalin. We explained this gzeira before in the Gemara. Okay. Reish Lakish says there is no kinyan of kesef for metaltalin. He learns in the pasuk Oy Kone Miyada Misecha that the kinyan of kesef, that the kinyan for metaltalin is Miyada Misecha. That's Mashicha. When you take the object itself from the hands of your friend, that's what creates the kinyan. Okay, so here the Gemara is going to ask on I think Reish Lakish from the Mishnah, the beginning of the Perek here. Tanan, it said in the Mishnah, the beginning of the Perek. So the Mishnah, the beginning is here, the Gemara quotes from the middle of the Mishnah, but the halacha that the Mishnah there says is, in a case where a person paid for metaltalin and the kinyan did not take effect, there was no Mashicha, but nevertheless the Mishnah continues and says, Aval Omru, nevertheless, even though the kinyan did not take effect yet, and therefore Me'ikar Adin, you can have charata from the sale, but nevertheless it was said, Mi Shepara Mideira Mabel, the one that punished the generation of the Mabel, who asadli para, he will come and punish with someone that doesn't keep his word, and after money was paid to him, he backs out of the sale. So like Gemara explains, why does a person deserve this misha para? If you're going to say that ma is kaina is like Rabbi Yochanan said, that really minatayre, the kinyan of kesef for metaltalin takes effect. Chachamim were geyser that you should be able to retract until after Mashiach. So you can understand why the Mishnah is saying that even though the kinyan did not take effect, but nevertheless there's a misha para, because really minatayre, the kesef is a kinyan. But if you're going to say, like Reish Lakish said, that there is no source b'chlal for the concept of a kinyan of kesef for metaltalin. So my koi bavel. Why should we say that? Nevertheless, we give him this misha para. Why should he get a misha para? The paying of the money is no trace of a kinyan here, b'chlal. So if there's no kinyan at all, so then it should be simple to be able to have charat, and there should be no misha para. That's the Gemara, mishum devarim. The reason why there's a misha para is because of the word. The seller gave his word that I'm going to sell you this, and the buyer paid it for it already. So just the word that he gave, and now he's backing out of it. You back out from a word that you give. For that, you deserve this misha para.
You suppose both on the meicher and
on the meicher, I believe. Yeah, I think it's going on. I think it's going on the meicher.
It's going on the meicher over here, but it's going on. Why not both?
Could be. Okay, could be. It goes on both. Yeah.
What's misha para?
Misha para, the one that punishes. Hashem that punished the Torah Mabel and so on, punishes the one that backs out of the sale. But the Gemara asks on this, ubedvarim mi koi bavel. So the question is, just because you back out from your word, do you deserve what the Mishnah says, aval, that we say to this person, misha para, that Hashem would punish him? But we learned in the Braisa, Rab Shimon says, afal pisha amru, even though it was said that talis kaine din is of, that if a person is acquiring a talis and he does the act of the kinyan, the meshicha in the talis, so then the kinyan is in effect, and now he has to pay the din is of for this talis. On the other hand, ve'ein din of kind of talis. But if you take or if you give the payment of a din of, that does not create a kinyan for the talis if you did not do an act of the kinyan in the talis. Again, this is here the point, that the act of the kinyan has to be done in the object that you're acquiring, and the payment of the money does not create a kinyan. And the chiddush over here of this brayse is, even though it's talking about a din zahav, and earlier in the Perek we said that a din zahav is gold is considered to be a paid, it's considered to be the object or the commodity, but in relation to a talis, the gold is considered to be the money. So therefore, if you get the money, this din of, it's not going to create a kinyan. But Mekal Makayim Kach halacha, yes, this is true, this is the halacha, that the Bezdin cannot in any way force him to stick to the kinyan if there was no act of a kinyan in the talis itself. But nevertheless, Aval Omru, but it was said, like we learned in our Mishnah, that a person that backs out of the kinyan after the dinner zav was paid, Misha para mancha dera mabel or mancha dera flaga, the Eibusha that punished the dera mabel and the dera flaga, or me'anshis daim, and the Eibusha that also punished the people in Staim, va'amayra, or me'mitzrayim bayam, and the Eibusha that punished the Mitzrayim by the yam, who asadli hipara, mimi she'ena oimed b'diburai, will also punish the one that does not keep his word. That's what the Rab Shimon says in the beginning here. Now then, Rab Shimon adds, "V'hanoisiv v'noisim b'dvarim loy kana." However, a person that's doing business and he just gives his word for something, and then just giving your word, there's no kinyan. But if after you gave your word, you have charata and you say, no, I back out, I'm not selling it to you, the Chachamim are not happy with a person backing out. And Rava explained, when it says here in the Braisa, when a person gave his word and he backed out, what does it mean? That all we have over here is what, in other words, Rava is explaining that when it said Ein Ruach Chachamim Noichei Menu means justice, that Chachamim are not happy with him. But there is no Mishapara. We're not going to tell a Mishapara that Hashem should punish you just for backing out from your word. So what's the Gemara's question? We see here in the Sefer of this Braisa, just backing out after you gave your word is not a reason to say for a person Mishapara, that he would be punished. True, Chachamim are not happy with backing out from your word, but nevertheless, not a Mishapara. So how can we say, according to the Shlokish, that the Pshat in the Mishnah is that when a person gives money and there's no kinyan here at all, that there's a Mishapara just for backing out because he gave his word? So the Gemara answers, there's a difference. If you gave your word, not only you gave your word, but also the buyer already gave you money for this, then we say, Aval, but there's going to be a Mishapara, that the person should be punished for backing out from this. But then in this Braisa here, where it said that it's just a word, and therefore if you back out, Chachamim are not happy, but there's no Mishapara, Dvarim Veleka Badayimois, if it's a word that you gave, and there is no payment of money, then like Koi Bavel, then there's no Mishapara. Tosfos over here points out that the truth is, the whole discussion of the Gemara is hard to understand, because you see already from this Braisa itself that the Gemara asks, in the Reisha of the Braisa, Rab Shimon Aimed clearly says regarding the case of the talis and the zav, that if you pay the money and you didn't do a kinyan in the talis yet, that there's a mishapara. So you see from the Braisa itself this distinction. Okay, Tosfos answers it. Tosfos says that the Gemara thought in the beginning that the Reisha of the Braisa is just Rab Shimon. The Gemara before, Mem Zayin Amud Beis, proved that Rab Shimon holds that mois is kaina min atayra from a taltlin, and even Reish Lakish agrees to that. Reish Lakish's opinion that there's no kinyan for mois or kesef from a taltlin is not according to Rab Shimon. So the Gemara thought that the reisha is Rab Shimon, so therefore it's ignoring that reisha. Okay, now the Gemara brings Amar Rava said here regarding this whole machlokes, whether there is a kinyan of kesef from a taltlin min atayra or not. So Rava said kra umasnita. There's a pasuk and also a Braisa, which Misayeh Leil Reish Lakish. That's a proof to Reish Lakish's opinion that there's no kinyan of kesef min atayra for metaltlin. What's the source for the pasuk? Because there's a pasuk that says as follows. This is the pasuk where it speaks about a person that denies money that he owes his friend. Then later on he comes and he admits, and he swore falsely, that is. And then he later on comes and admits that he owes the money, so he has to pay the keren and the chaimish and a carbon. So when the pasuk says this, the pasuk gives 4 examples. He denied to his friend that he owes him money. Now it could be b'pekadon, regarding a case where he had a pekadon for his friend. Oy b'sesumes yad. Sesumes yad, as we'll see, refers to a loan that you got from your friend. Oy begazel, or you stole something from him. Oy ashak esamisai, or you're holding up money that you owe him, and this refers to an employer that's holding up money from his employee. Okay, so now the Gemara explains in all of these cases, when is the person going to be chayiv if he denied this and then later he admitted? So he explains as follows. To sumas yad, when it says here in the pasuk that you chayiv in a case where you borrowed money and then you denied that you have this money from your friend. When is that? Rav Chisda says kagoin sheyichad lekeilil alvasai. You're only going to be chayiv if when you swore falsely for this, only if you designated a certain keli that you're going to be paying for this loan. And the reason for this is because otherwise, what's every loan? Every loan, the money that you get is made to spend. When you deny the money that you owe to your friend, you can't say that there's something specific that is your friend's that you deny. You deny that you owe him money, but there is nothing specific. The halacha of the shvuah that person swore falsely and then you have to bring a carbon is like by pekadon. If I have my friend's item in my possession and then I deny that I have it and I swore falsely and then I agree and admit later, then you have to pay the keren, the chaimish, and the carbon. But by halva, that's not the case. The money that you have is now yours to spend. You have to pay back. You owe the money, but so therefore he says the only way there's going to be a chiyuv of the shvuas shav over here, or the shvuas sheker here, is if it's sumas yad in a case where you have something specific that you designated to pay, and then you deny that. That's what Rav Chisda explained. Now, similar oshak, when it says here that you're holding up payment for an employee, Amar Rav Chisda, so Rav Chisda says also, the case of here is that you hired someone and you designated a certain keli that you're going to pay him, and then you deny that I have that keli that I designated to pay you. Okay, so that's the 4 cases that the pasuk in the beginning says when it speaks about the fact that the person denied that he owes this, whether it's a pekadon, whether it's a loan, whether it's a gzela, or a case that he owed his friend pay for the work that he did for him. Now you go on 2 psukim later. The pasuk goes on to describe what happened. The pasuk comes back and describes what happened there. It says, "Ksiv." The pasuk says, "V'hoya ki yechta." So this person sinned. V'ashem. V'heishav es hagzela shagazal. So here, what happened? The person then he swore falsely about this, and then he came and he admitted. So what do you do? V'heishav es hagzela shagazal. He has to return the gzela. Oyes ha'oshek asher oshak, or the money that he held up from his employee and he didn't pay. Or this pekadon that he had that he denied. So here when the pasuk comes and says that he has to pay what he swore falsely about, it skips one of the 4 examples that are brought in the beginning. The case of sesumas yad, which is the case of the loan, when the person designated a specific keli that is going to pay for this loan, that case the pasuk skips. Why does the pasuk do that? My timer, what's the reason for this? So the Gemara says, Lav, don't you think the reason is Mishum de Mechsere Meshicha? Because even if you did designate a keli that you're going to pay to the malva, but how did the malva acquire that keli that you designated for him? Just because he lent you money, so you got money from him, and therefore in return now you designated this keli. But that's just money that you got from him. Regarding metaltalin, getting money does not create a kinyan for this keli, for the malva. He didn't do any act of a kinyan in this keli itself. So therefore the pasuk is specifically skipping it over here. When it says that you're going to be chayiv to pay, that there will be no shvua over here, there will be no chiv over here. In this case, when you swore falsely regarding this keli that you designated for him, because the malva never acquired it. It's not his. So when you denied it, there won't be any chiv for it. So you see over here, the pasuk is doing this in order to give you over here, to teach you this halacha that Reish Lakish taught, that there's no kinyan for metaltalin unless there's Mashiach. So the Gemara asks on this, Amalei Rav Papa Rav Papa asks Rav, Eime me Oishek hu the hadekra. Why shouldn't you say that, look, there's another case here in the pasuk, which is similar to this case of halva. Just like by halva, you owed your friend money, and we said that the case is that you designated a keli. There's the other case where an employer, he owed his employees money, and he also designated a keli, as we said, in order to pay him. And that case, the pasuk does repeat. The pasuk does come back and say that over here you will be chayiv. So the question is, ask the same question here. If you designated a keli for your worker, how did he acquire that keli without Mashiach? If according to Reish Lakish, we're saying that here's the source that there must be Mashiach, but regarding the case of the Oishek, there was no Mashiach. So the Gemara explains, so you're going to have to say the case over there is Hacha b'maya skinon. By that case, what is it speaking about that we say that no, that this keli that you designated does belong to your worker? The case over here is that you already gave this keli to your worker. You say you hire a worker and you say to him, you work for me, and you give him this keli in exchange for his work. And now that worker went and gave you back that keli as a pekadon to hold it onto it for me until this and this time. That's the case over here. So over here in this case, there's no question of how he was kained. He did do Mashiach. You gave it to him already. If that's the case, if so, haine pekadon. Why is the pasuk giving another example? It's the same exact thing as any regular pekadon that a person gives you to hold on something for him. So the Gemara answers, you're right, Trei Gavne Pekadon. The pasuk is giving 2 examples of a pekadon that if you swear falsely about it, you have to bring a carbon and so on. But it's only in a case where he actually took it and there was a Mashiach that will be a kinyan. Without Mashiach, there's no kinyan. Okay, so now the Gemara comes back, but if this is the way you're explaining regarding this payment for the worker, So regarding the case of Sasumas Yad, which is the loan, let's say the same thing. Lahadre, why doesn't the pasuk say this case as well again when it talks about what you have to pay? And veloik may, and we'll explain the same thing. That the case of the loan is that you have a keli that you designate for the lender, and you say, here, this is your keli, and he lends you money, and then he gives it back to you to hold on as a pekaton for him. So there was a Mashiach and the keli already. So the Gemara explains like this. No, if the pasuk would take a repeat again and say that you'd be chayiv for the case of Sasumas Yad, which is the case of the loan, so then I would say like this. It's not clear what the case of this loan is, and I could interpret it in two different ways. And I would say loy tiyufte v'loy siyata. It's not going to be a question on Ish Lakish, but at the same time, it's also not going to be a proof for his opinion. And the reason is because if the Torah is telling you that you have to pay for the case of this loan, what is the case of the loan? The case of the loan could be without Meshicha in any specific object. Then it would be a question on Ish Lakish. How did he acquire this keli if there was no Meshicha done in it? Or it could be maybe that that he did designate a keli and he even gave it to him already, and therefore there was Meshicha in it. If the Torah would repeat it, then you can interpret it one in two ways. It wouldn't be a raya or a question on him. So therefore we say like this, Lo Yahadre Kra, the Torah specifically omits this case for the reason to teach you this halacha that there is no kinyan without doing a Mashiach in it. So the fact that we see that the Torah mentions the Sasumas Yad in the beginning, which is the case of the loan, and then the Torah omits it later when it talks about the Chiyuv, that you chayiv when you swore falsely, there's a reason why the Torah is doing that. Why is it omitting this case? In order to teach you this halacha, that the loan that we're talking about over here is a keli that was designated, but there was no Mashiach done with it. So since there was no Mashiach, so the Malva never acquired it, so therefore there can't be any Chiyuv in this. This is the source from the pasuk for Ish Lakish's opinion, that there's no kinyan of kesef for metaltlin, only Mashiach. But the Gemara asks on this, what's the source that we're saying? The source is that the Torah omits this case of halva. So that shows that there's no kinyan with Mashiach, with kesef, just Mashiach. But Vatanya, Rab Shimon says, there's another pasuk further on that seemingly does include this case. Rab Shimon says, Minayin litin is Amr lamayla lamato. How do I know that what the Torah said in the beginning? And again, in the beginning, the Torah said 4 examples of the case here. And then later on, when the Torah talks about the payment, the Torah only says 3 examples, and it skips one. But Rab Shimon says, how do I know that even though it only says 3 examples, it includes really everything that it said earlier? The answer is the chsiv, because in the next pasuk it adds, it says, Oy mikol asher yeshava olav l'sheker, or in any case where the person swore falsely about money that he owes his friend. So the Torah adds, Mikol Asher Yeshava. So from this I see that it includes also a case of halva, the Sasumas Yad, which is mentioned in the beginning. So how can you tell me that the source for the Shlakish, that there's no kinyan unless there's Mashiach done, is because the Torah specifically omits this case of halva? But no, Shimon said that the Torah adds it later on by writing the words Mikol Asher Yeshava Olav. Amarav Nachman, Amarav Baravu, Amarav, what is it coming to add? L'Rabbi, Sasumas Yad, L'Hishavin. It's coming to add that case of Sasumas Yad, which is a case of the loan, which it didn't say explicitly in the previous pasuk that you have to return it, and if you don't, the same halacha applies to this like the other cases. But the Gemara answer is no. There's still a source for Reish Lakish because behedye miyeh loy ahadrika. The pasuk still did not explicitly mention the case of Sasumas Yad. Why did the pasuk write it in such a way? In the beginning, when it describes the 4 cases, it spells out clearly the case of Sasumas Yad, the case of the loan. Then in the end, it does not spell it out clearly. It just says it with a hint, or it says it by using this term of Mikol Asher Yeshava Olav. Why did the Torah do that? The reason why it's doing it, because it wants you to understand that when it comes to Sasumas Yad, which is the loan, you're not always going to be chayiv for swearing falsely on this. Because in a regular case of a loan, there is no specific object that the lender acquired already that you're denying that you'd be chayiv for. So therefore, he writes it with this ribus. From that you understand that only in a case where you had a keli that you already gave him, and he gave it back to you by a loan, that's when you're going to be chayiv for the shuas shav, for the shuas sheker. But otherwise, you're not going to be chayiv. And so the change in the lashon of the pasuk where it didn't spell out clearly Sasumas Yad is for the reason to teach me this din that if there's no Mashiach, you're not going to be kaina. That's the source of the pasuk to Reish Lakish's opinion. From Oikana Miyad, true. The Gemara before brought the pasuk Oikana Miyad to say that you kaina with Mashiach, but here the Gemara is bringing another pasuk. Or maybe the main thing over here is to prove that Kesef is not kaina. Oikana Miyad proves that Mashiach is kaina. Here we're proving that we see from this pasuk, from the omission of this case of Sasumas Yad, that Kesef does not work for Metaltlin. This is the pasuk now. Masnite said before, Rav said before that we have a brisa that says like Rish Lakish as well. What's the brisa? Minalam. What do we see in a brisa? Tanya, the brisa says, and this brisa is speaking about a person that by mistake uses the money of hektish for himself. So the brisa says, Nasna Labalan. He took the money of hektish and b'sheigig he paid it to a bathhouse attendant to use the bath. Mo'al, just by paying it for this purpose, right away he used the money of the hektish as mi'ila. Now, what's the why is it giving dafka this case of the balon? When you pay this money for a bathhouse attendant, how about you took the money of hektish and you paid it for anything else? You went to buy something and you used the money of hektish to pay for something that you want to buy. Are you going to say the same thing? As soon as you use that money to pay, you're going to be moil right away? So the Rav says no. Rav explained, dafka balon. This brisa uses specifically the example when you pay for a bath. Because over here, as soon as you pay the money, you have the rights to use the bath for yourself. There's no additional kinyan that's acquired, so the money of hektish was totally used already. That's the me'ilah. But if it would be something else, if you go to the store and you want to buy a bottle of milk and you use the money of hektish to pay for it, but you didn't pick up the milk yet, you didn't do the meshich in the bottle of milk yet, so there was no kinyan that took effect yet. The mechzer meshicha, so you didn't do any act of the meshicha in the object yet. Loy mal, the money that you paid, there's no me'ilah because the kinyan did not take effect yet. Ad the mashach until you do the meshicha. So here, and you see in this brisa clearly regarding the halacha of paying with money of hektish, that paying there's no kinyan here at all. If you would say like Rabbi Yechanan, that minat Torah, the kinyan from a metaltalin does work with kesef, so then you should say anytime you pay for any metaltalin, it should be me'ilah right away, because minat Torah, it is a kinyan. So this is the raya from the brisa to Rish Lakish. But the Gemara asks on this, but vatanya, but in the brisa we learned, nasna l'sapar mal, that if you took the money of hektish and you paid a barber, so then as soon as you paid him this money, you are going to be moil right away. But the question is, v'sapar haboy lemimshach tespeides. In the case of the barber, you can't say that as soon as you pay the money, so right away there's a kinyan that takes effect. No. He's going to be doing this work for you. He's going to be giving you a haircut. So the only way that there's any kinyan that takes effect is there has to be some kind of meshicha here, and that would be that you would pick up the scissors or the haircut machine in your hands. That is the only way that the kinyan takes effect. Rabbeinu Tam over here in Taisa says that from here is a proof that anytime you hire a worker, if you take the kalim that he brings and you pick it up, you do a meshicha in the kalim that he brings, that's machayev the worker to do the job for you, and he can't back out. Just like you see over here regarding the barber, that you pay him. But if you pay him, he can still back out. Oh, forget it, I'm not giving you a haircut. But the moment you pick up his scissors, that's what obligates him to do his work. That's how Rabbeinu Tam explains this Gemara here. So the point is that over here we see that the kinyan of kesef, just by paying it, right away you moil even before you picked up the scissors. Answers the Gemara, over here, this brisa that says that you moil right away when you pay this barber, it's talking about a goya barber. The la bar meshichahu. The halacha of the kinyan of meshicha does not apply to a goy. We learned it out before from the pasuk oikone miyada misecha, that the kinyan is ba'amisecha, by your friend, which is only a yid, not by a goy. By a goy, the kinyan is just with payment of kesef. The Gemara brings a raya to this. Tanya nami hachi. We learned like this in the brisa because in another brisa it says nasna l'sapar or l'sapon or l'chol bali umnis. You took the money of hektish and you paid it, whether to a barber or a person that has a boat. He rents out a boat to you, or he drives you in a boat, or l'chol bali umnis, or anyone else that any craftsman that does a job for you. Loy mal adam mashach. Here, this brisa clearly says that there's no me'ilah just by paying. The me'ilah is only after there's a meshicha which creates a kinyan. So kashina dodi, isn't this a contradiction to what we said in the previous brisa, that as soon as you pay the barber, the me'ilah that is right when you pay? Elalav, the answer must be, as we said, that Shema, we must say kam b'sapa nochri. If it's a goyish barber, so then as soon as you pay him, that's the kinyan, because by a goy the kinyan is kesef, even for metaltalin, and kam b'sapa Yisrael, by a Yiddish barber, the kinyan is only when you pick up the scissors, you do a meshicha. Shema, this is a clear raya to what we said. Okay, so the Gemara just brought a clear raya from the pasuk and a raya from a brisa to Rish Lakish's opinion. But nevertheless, the Gemara comes back and says, "V'chein Amar Rav Nachman," that Rav Nachman actually agreed to Rabbi Yechanan, that dvar Torah mois kindness, that minat Torah mois money, payment of money is a kinyan for metaltalin. Ubatka Levi b'masnite, and Levi also he checked this, or Rashi says he put the right version into a brisa that he taught, and va'ashkach, and he found the right version of the brisa that he taught, where it says as follows: Nasna l'sitain, if a person gives the money of hektish to a sitain. A sitain is a wholesaler. Rashi says the way it works with a wholesaler is this wholesaler sells his produce for wholesale. So the storekeepers that buy from the wholesaler, they give him a deposit in the beginning for the whole season, and then throughout the season they pay him the rest of the money after they have their income. So over here, if you gave a deposit to this wholesaler from the money of hektish, you're mile right away. So you see clearly over here that this brisa is saying that when you pay the money to this wholesaler, even before there was any meshicha to the produce that you're buying from him, the me'ilah takes effect right away. That's a proof to what Rabbi Yochanan is saying, that min ha'teireh, kesef is kind of min ha'teireh. So the Gemara asks, Ela kashia l'Rish Lakish. So there's a question over here on Rish Lakish's opinion that says that kesef is not kind of min ha'teireh. Amalech Rish Lakish will answer you, Ha mani Rab Shimoni. That brisa that we just quoted of the wholesaler, that goes according to Rab Shimon. As I mentioned before, the Gemara and Daf Mem Zayin proved from the Mishnah at the beginning of the Perek that Rab Shimon holds, like Rab Yochanan, that kesef is a kinyan min ha'teireh. And even Rish Lakish agrees to that. Rish Lakish says that he only says his opinion according to the Rabbanan. The Gemara proved it before in Daf Mem Zayin. Okay, that's the conclusion of this whole sugya about the kinyan of kesef regarding the taltal. And here there's a big machlekes rishayim who we paskin like. Taisus over here says that we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. It's b'chlal the klal and shas. Whenever there's a machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, you always paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. However, Rashi holds throughout shas that we paskin like Rish Lakish because the Gemara before brought a pasik and a brayse to prove what Rish Lakish says. So Rashi holds that in this case we paskin like Rish Lakish. Okay, let's go on to the next point that was mentioned in the Mishnah that the Gemara already brought before. Even though the kinyan for metaltlin does not work with paying money, but once you paid money, there is a mishapara. We say to the person that backs out that the one that punished the Deira Mavel will punish you for backing out. So this lashon of mishapara, you tell this person that backed out mishapara, what does it mean? Itmar Abaya says, I do a medina late. The mishapara is we're just letting him know that you should know that if you're backing out, the end is that you'll get punished. Rava says when we say the mishapara, we're not just letting him know. It's much more. Meilet laitinale. We're actually cursing him that this should happen to him. Abaya says we're just letting him know. A nasi, amongst your people, you should not curse, which really goes also on every single yid. You're not allowed to curse a yid. So this yid as well, even though he's backing out from a sale, but we just let him know what could happen to him. They should be careful, but we can't curse him. However, Rava says, that when we say this to him, we are cursing him, because the pasuk says, that one amongst your nation should not be cursed. That's someone that's doing what he's supposed to. Like a Yidden in the nation of Yidden. But over here, this person though that backs out from a sale after he was paid, that's not called Oisa Maisa Amcha. Rashi brings a pasuk where it says, She'eris Yisrael lo yasu avlov lo yidabru kozov. That the one amongst Yidden, you should not speak a lie. So over here, the person gave his word and he got paid already and he backs out afterwards. That's not Oisa Maisa Amcha, so therefore he's cursed. So Rava says, Minallah, from where do I know that we're just letting him know. We're not cursing him. Sorry, one second. No, Rav actually says that we do. Sorry, Rav is the one that says that we do curse him when we say the Mishapara. So Rav says, what's my source to say that the Mishapara is that we're actually cursing him? Because this is a story that happened with Rab Chia bar Yosef. The Rab Chia bar Yosef, which was a great Amayra, so Yavulei Zuze Amilcha. He was selling salt, and he gave his word that he's selling the salt, and he was already paid for the salt. But then the price of salt went up before the buyer did an act of a kinyan of Meshich in the salt. The price of salt went up, so now he can retract from the kinyan and make more money. Also, like Rabbi Yochanan, so he came to Rabbi Yochanan. He asked Rabbi Yochanan whether he should back out or not. Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan says, Zil Havlu, go and give him the salt that you said you would give him, that you would sell him. V'iloi, and if not, Kabel Alecha Mishapara. You'll accept upon yourself a Mishapara as it is with a person that backs out from a sale after he got paid for it. That's the story that happened with Reb Chia bar Yosef. Huh? Over here it's on the seller, yeah. So now the Gemara says, V'i Amrit, I do my din and lay. If you're going to say that the whole Mishapara is just that we notify him of punishment that could happen to him if he backs out. So the Gemara asks, Rab Chia bar Yosef bari duihu. Was Rab Chia bar Yosef an individual that you have to let him know what kind of punishment could happen to him? Rab Chia bar Yosef was a great Amayra. He knows exactly what kind of punishment will happen to him if he backs out. He doesn't need anybody to let him know this. So it must be that it's not just to let him know, but it's actually a curse. The Elamai, but the Gemara asks, no, that doesn't make sense either. What are you going to say? Meilet laitinan lei? That the Mishapara means that we actually curse him. Rab Chia bar Yosef, asi lekabule ale letusa de Rabbanon. Rab Chia bar Yosef came to Rabbi Yochanan to ask about this, and he's ready to accept upon himself the curse of the Chachamim, the Mishapara. Rab Chia bar Yosef should know that if he's going to back out, there'll be a curse from the Chachamim. What does it mean that he's coming and asking? He knows this. So how could you say that he's asking and he wants to accept upon himself this curse of the Chachamim? So therefore the Gemara says that story is a different story. What happened over there is Rab Chia bar Yosef, a Raven hu diyavle. Rab Chia bar Yosef, he only got paid a down payment or a deposit for the salt that he was selling. He wasn't paid the full price. So Savar, he thought, Kenegda Yukaina, that the buyer for the deposit, that amount, we say that he has to give it to the buyer. But the rest, maybe I can back out from the sale. The price went up now, I can make more money. And on that, Rabbi Yochanan told him, no, keneged kula yukaina. Once he gave you a deposit, so the kinyan, even though it's metaltal and the kinyan doesn't really take effect, but now if you're going to back out from any percent of the sale, the mishapara will apply to you as well. That was the shaila that he had. Okay, so now regarding this halachit that Rabbi Yochanan said, the Gemara brings that it's actually a machlokes. So Itmer, we learned about this, a Ravain, regarding the Taltlin, where a person gives a deposit. So Rav says only the value of that deposit is what we say that that is a beginning of a sale here, and therefore you should follow through with the sale, and if not, there'll be a mishapara. Only regarding, this is regarding metaltlin. And it's the same thing also. Rashi explains here that what Rav is saying is not only regarding metaltlin, but the same thing is also regarding karka, a piece of land where the kinyan of kesef is a real kinyan. And what Rav is saying is, if you're buying a property and you give a down payment, and then later you want to back out, the sale takes effect in the value of that down payment, not more than that. But Rabbi Yochanan says, like Rabbi Yochanan said before to Rav Chia bar Yosef, Keneget kula yukaina. Once you give a down payment, the kinyan takes effect completely for the entire thing that you're selling. If it's metaltlin, it should take effect for everything. That if you back out, there'll be a mishapara. If it's for karka, where kesef is a kinyan, the kinyan of the down payment takes effect for the entire property. So the Gemara asks on this from what it says in the Braise, Meisvei, we learned in the Braise like this, Hanoisen Eroven lachaveirei. A person that gives an Eroven for his friend. Now here Rashi says this Eroven that this Braise in the beginning is talking about is not a down payment or a deposit like the Gemara spoke about before. This Eroven is talking about security, like a mashkin sort of. A person that tells his friend that, here, I'm giving you over here this object as a security. And he says to his friend like this, Imani chayzer bi, if I'm going to back out from this sale, ervaini macholach, then you can keep my mashkin that I'm giving you. So this is the buyer. The buyer is telling the seller, here, I'm giving you this item, and if I back out from the sale, then you can keep my mashkin. And the seller says, if I'm going to back out from the sale, so then I'll give you double of what I said that I will sell you. So Neskaimu Tanoim, the conditions that they made there takes effect. That if one take backs out, then the seller will keep the mashkin, or if the buyer if the buyer backs out, the seller will keep the mashkin. If the seller backs out, then the buyer will get double. Divrei Rabbi Yosi, this is Rabbi Yosi's opinion. Now the Gemara explains what's the chiddush here and what Rabbi Yosi is saying. Rabbi Yosi l'taimei, what Rabbi Yosi here says that this kind of condition takes effect. Rabbi Yosi, it follows his reasoning that he says the Omar asmachte kanye. When a person says something that you can rely on this, and he gives you something that you can rely on, which is really, Rashi uses the expression of guzma. You're saying something which is a sort of an exaggeration. Because over here, the buyer is saying that if I back out and I'm going to end up getting nothing from you, nevertheless you can keep my mashkin, which is valuable. Or the seller says also a guzme. If I back out, then I'll give you double. It seems just words of an exaggeration, but nevertheless, this type of condition that's made in a sale is real. A person is relying on this, and it takes effect. That's what Rabbi Yossi says here. Now, on this, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Dayoi sheyikne keneged ervainai. No, when you give this kind of security for a sale, whether the seller or the buyer is saying this, it only takes effect in the value of what that mashkin is, not more. Omer Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, Bamed dvarim amurim, when did Rabbi Yehuda say that when you give this security, so then it only takes effect according to what the value of this mashkin is that you gave? Bizman she'omer lo ervaini yikoin, when you spelled out clearly that it's this mashkin that the kinyan should take effect according to its value. And then you say that it's more than that. To say that you're going to give him double or anything different, that's an asmach, then it's not going to be kaina. Aval, however, in a case where he didn't spell that out clearly, but the case is a regular case of a down payment. Going back to this is mamish the same case as we had before the machlokes of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Machalei bayis, you sold someone a house, a soda or a property be'elef zuz, you sell it to him, and you tell him the value of this is 1,000 zuz. Uparalei mem chamish mezuz, and the buyer gives a down payment. He pays 50%, 500 zuz. So in this case, he didn't spell out that the kinyan should be dafka according to the value that I gave. It's a plain down payment that he gave. Maybe he told him that the rest I owe you, or he didn't spell it out, but it's a down payment. In such a case, what's the halacha kona? When you make the down payment, you acquire the whole entire property. And then you're going to have to pay the rest that you owe for this property even years later. So what do we see over here? We're talking about a sale of a property with a down payment, and the Braisa clearly says that in a case where it's a simple down payment, without spelling out clearly that it should be only a kinyan of this amount, that the down payment acquires the entire thing. So this is a raya to what Rabbi Yochanan said. So now the Gemara says, this Braisa speaks about karka. So my love, don't you think, who adin metaltalin? The same halacha would be regarding metaltalin, even though by metaltalin, kesef, payment of money is not a kinyan, but regarding the mishapara, we say that bidistame, kana lo lekula, that in a simple case where you didn't spell out clearly, like it said before, ervaini yikain, but you just give a down payment for metaltalin, that you acquire the entire thing. So there's no difference, both by karka and metaltalin, it does take effect for the entire thing, like Rabbi Yochanan said. So the Gemara says, no, it's not the same thing. Loi. Metaltalin b'distama loy kani. By metaltalin, if you give a down payment, so over there, that down payment is not going to take effect for the entire thing, that now you get a mishapara if you back out from the other half. But by karka, if you give a down payment, it does take effect for the entire karka. What's the difference? So ma'ishno, what's the difference between them? Karka, the bekas bekonile, mamish, when it comes to karka, because kesef is a real kinyan for karka. It's a proper kinyan for karka. So therefore, if you give a down payment of the kesef, the kinyan will take effect for the entire karka. But when it comes to metaltalin, kesef is not a real kinyan at all. The whole kesef that you're paying is just a kinyan for the purpose of that. Then we'll say that he gets a punishment if he backs out. Over here, you can say that it doesn't take effect for the entire thing. If you back out from the other part that you didn't pay, then there won't be any mishapara for that part. So there's no raya from this brisa. Okay.